Hello, it's Michelle DeLeon for Two Peas in a Bucket with another Seeing Double video. This month, I wanted to focus on adding hand stitching to your projects. I'm definitely not an expert, but I really like the handmade look it adds to your pages and cards. So the products that I'm going to be using mainly are scraps and leftovers from the mini book theme that we had in the garden gallery. So for this mini book, I used a lot of different manufacturers and products, and I had a lot of papers and scraps left over that I really liked and I didn't want to throw away. So here's just a quick flip through of the album. And for the scraps that I really liked, I just made a small collection of them, and I wanted to use them right away in a page just so that I didn't forget about them and end up throwing it out later. As you can see, I used a lot of envelopes and dark wood grain and gold accents, so those are some of the scraps that I will be using for my layout and for my card today. This handwritten cutout is from the Two Peas digital cut files for November, and I just cut it out and I intended to use it just as it was here. But I decided to try something a little different since my last Seeing Double video focused on typography and used a big cutout word title as well. So here I'm just using some washi tape to keep the letters in place so that it doesn't leave any adhesive markings after. So what I intended to do was use the cut file for a guide for poking through holes for hand stitching. So here I just tried it on a scrap piece of paper to make sure that when I do connect the dots that it still forms the shape of the letter. And I just sped this part up because it was just me poking holes throughout all of the letters. And something I would try to do next time maybe is to poke holes first at the main points of the letter, so at the bottom and at the top of the loop and that intersecting portion, and then work the other holes through. I also tried to leave a little bit of space when I had loops in the letters so that they wouldn't be too close together when I go back and add the stitching after. So here's what it looked like after I finished the first word, and I just continued the process for the rest of the letters. When I finally finished all of the words, this is what it looked like with the holes. And now it was time to add the stitching. So I wanted to use this teal turquoise color and red for the heart. And again, I'm definitely not an expert at this, but I really like the look and the texture that it adds to the page, and I just wanted to give it a try and see how it would work out. It took me a while to finish all of the letters, but once the holes were all poked through, the actual stitching is something that you can do taking a break or watching something else. Here's what the finished stitching looks like. It's not perfect, and I'm okay with that. It still looks like the letters that it's supposed to, which was my main goal. Just the U in the your was a little off, but I think you can get the overall gist. To balance the heavy title on the left side, I wanted to add my photo and layers to kind of the bottom right corner. So I have my scraps of paper here, and also a glassine bag to add a different texture to the layers. So I'm just arranging them here with the photo going to be matted again on that Amy Tangerine paper, and just adding the strips as layers. I like getting the main elements in place before adding the smaller embellishments, so I'm just making sure I have the main parts here. This is the November printable from Two Peas in a Bucket, and I wanted to add that Christmas countdown as another layer behind the photo. And this actually directed the rest of my page. I liked the whole countdown idea, and I wanted to add different numbers behind my photo and layers. So I have the Maggie Holmes chipboard shapes, and I just wanted to add those different colorful numbers. I started by moving my photo and layers just up a bit so I can make sure that I can see where the numbers will be. And I just wanted them layered behind. I didn't want all of them to be visible completely. I wanted some of them peeking out behind. I tried to just add them randomly. I didn't want them to be in numerical order of any sort. I really like that each letter is completely different, whether it be the font or the pattern or the color. When I had the idea to add different numbers, I was going to just use different thickers with numbers, but I had the chipboard shape out from when I was working on my mini book, and I happened to notice that it had all of these wonderful numbers. And just as a side note, if you're wondering why I seem to be changing clothes a lot in this video, it's because I did a lot of it on different days, mainly because daylight savings and one less hour of sunlight kind of threw me off for filming. I kept moving my photo and layers up and down just to make sure that the numbers would still be visible, and then I just got really annoyed with how it kept falling apart, so I decided to start adhering some of the things down so that I wouldn't have to keep rearranging each layer. So I'm just adding a small amount of adhesive right now. The main idea was just to have it kept in place while I rearrange the rest of the page. So now that I have all of the numbers in place, I wanted to add my journaling, and I had a perfect spot just under the hand stitch title there. So I decided to print it out on different strips, and I'm just cutting the strips out here. So I'm just laying out the strips to make sure that they're where I want them to be. While I was doing this, I decided that I wanted to add something else to the background. I think I'm just not used to working with white cardstock as my background anymore. I usually use light pattern paper. So I wanted to add some mist and some ink splatters just to give the background a bit more depth. So I'm just going to move that layer away and move my strips and just cover them so they don't get the mist on them. I'm going to be using the Studio Calico Mr. Huey's Gold Spray, and I don't use spray too often. I find that I always feel like I'm going to mess up or make a mistake, but I just wanted to add it behind where the photo will be, and even if I feel like I've made a huge mistake, most of it will be covered anyways. I just wanted a bit of color and depth to the different sides of the page. After I added those two initial sprays, I wanted to stop. I felt like they were just two big blobs, but I added some of the Heidi Swap Color Shine as well, just for some different colors, and added gold to the other side of the page lightly, along with some ink splatters. I was slightly worried at this point. It just looked like a lot of mist. But once I added my photo and journaling back, I really liked the subtle effect it added to the page. So here I have the new Evalicious puffy stickers, and I just wanted to add those little triangles as accents to each journaling strip. I really love the colors in this sticker set. I thought that it matched the rest of the page and the color scheme really well. I'm just adding each triangle to the end of the journaling strip. I had to move them over slightly, actually, just because the first letter of the word started getting cut off, and I didn't want the stickers to be going off of the other side of the page either. I also wanted to add these just to add some more color to that left side of the page, since there's so much different colors from those numbers on the right-hand side. I wanted to add a few more embellishments, so I have the October Afternoon Silent Night washi tape with the chalkboard effect, and I just cut out a little phrase. It says merry and bright, and I wanted to add it to the bottom of my photo. I like that the chalkboard part of it blended in with the darkness of the photo there, but you can still see the lettering since it's white and it's really contrasting. I also wanted to add some of these word stickers from October Afternoon, and I just added one of the red words. It says traditions, and I wanted it in that corner, but I thought that it was a little bit of a weird space with the washi tape, so I'm deciding to move it over and not center it. So I just wanted a little cluster of embellishments on that bottom right-hand side of the photo. I was going to try to add a badge to that embellishment cluster, but it was a little big, so I decided to use this circle sticker from Evalicious and just add that to the cluster. I also ended up adding a Webster's Pages star paperclip to that little cluster as well. And here's a look at the stitching detail and the overall finished page. To start my card, I have a white card base here, and I wanted to use some of that Maggie Holmes vellum paper that I showed you in my mini book. I just have a little bit left here, so I wanted to make sure I use it. So I'm just going to glue it down onto my card first, and then cut around the edges. I just really didn't want to make a mistake and make it slightly too small since I don't have too much left. I just tried to add my adhesive to the gold portion so that you wouldn't see it through the translucent part. I have a scrap piece of white paper here, and I just cut it a little bit smaller so that you could still see the gold doily background. What I wanted to do with this part was add hand stitching in the shape of a tree, a very simple tree. I just wanted to add lines that form the overall triangle shape, and then just add some embellishments after to make it look more like a Christmas tree. I would recommend using a ruler when doing this just to have more exact measurements. I just eyeballed it and tried to make sure it looked like a tree. I just tried to make adjustments where it didn't seem completely symmetrical. So now I'm going to use those lines as guides for poking holes through to add stitching later. I added my holes first to the end points and then worked within. For the longer ones, I just had a middle one and then split it into two. And for the smaller ones, I just had the end points. So for the stitching, I just went in through the back through the first hole and then went through that second hole and then came back from the front from not the next hole but the hole after that, and then went back in through that hole. Sorry, it doesn't seem very descriptive with this and that, but I think you can kind of see what I was doing there. And I just continued that through for each line of the tree. Since I am a beginner at hand stitching, I like to use shorter lengths of embroidery floss so that it doesn't get all tangled up, and it's just a little bit easier for me to manage. So now that the stitching's done, I'm going to add some of these gold sequins from Studio Calico. They're star shaped, so there's gold, silver, and red. And I'm just going to add a mix of the big and the small throughout. I wanted to add them randomly. I didn't want it to be overly structured, so I'm just adding some of the big ones and then some of the little ones in between the lines. So other options are using regular sequins or different colored enamel dots or even smaller brads instead of these star sequins. Looking back now, I could have also added a different or bigger star to the very top, like an actual tree. So I couldn't find my Studio Calico Atlantic glitter stars, unfortunately, which is what I would have used at the top, but I like it how it looks without any decorative topper. And once those are added, I just used my hot glue gun to adhere them down, and I have another die cut from the 2Piece digital store. So here's a look at the finished card with the hand-stitched tree, and a look at the finished projects again. Thanks for watching.